Hello, welcome. It's season 1, episode 35 of UK Cowboys TV. I'm your host, Mike Poland. I've got the ever faithful with me, Jamie Smith, and we've got a very special guest with us, the return of RJ. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, amigos. It's good to see you again. Merry Christmas, Happy Christmas, and a good time of year to be chatting.
Yeah. No, not only is it a good time of year to be chatting, it's a good show to come on after an annihilation of the Rams. It's good to see the Cowboys get back on form and kill the losing streak. The Cowboys won 44-21 at AT&T against the Rams. Pretty much a game that was over by the half. I was telling Jamie off air before you joined us, my wife, she's not a big football fan. She is by default because of myself. And she's sitting there and she's like, it's half time. And she was like going, do you even need to watch the second half?
Yeah, that's those are the best types of games I think to watch. It was a great first half, and makes the second half's enjoyable. The whole week afterwards enjoyable. Kind of a shocker that it was that way against the Rams of all teams.
I know, yeah. Especially when they were starting to sort of start to peak, if you like, which was something we spoke about on the pre-game show. Now, there are a couple of injuries to go through. I don't know if you know a bit more, RJ. I'll ask you after this. But so far, what we've gathered is Leighton Van Der Esch is still out with that neck injury. Dax turned up with a finger hand problem that he's had, but I think that is probably going to get put to bed. We've got Luke Gifford on the report. Is there anybody else who's come out today, RJ, at all?
Not that I'm aware of. That about sums it up. I know Jason Garrett had mentioned Joe Thomas had a little this, not anything I think to be concerned about. The biggest one was Luke Gifford, which was unfortunate, but that's kind of what happens in this game.
Yeah, very true. But let's dive into the offense against the Rams. I'll ask you first, RJ, since you're our special guest, we'll let you take the reins first. Who, for this particular game, is your offensive MVP?
I mean, I don't know that you can really go anywhere besides Zeke Elliott. I think Zeke was marvelous. It was kind of a vintage Zeke game. It felt like we hadn't seen those Cowboys in a long time, even I think across this season. To do it against the defensive line that featured Aaron Donald was very impressive. I mean, Zeke was fantastic, and I think that that's a sign of a really good thing if you're looking for hope this time of year.
Yeah, agree. Have you got anyone different, Jay? Do you want to go with somebody different, or are you just going to stick with the Zeke?
You probably couldn't argue against Zeke. You know what I mean? I'm probably going to go a little bit just to the left a little bit, and I'm going to go Pollard. You know how much I love Pollard when we drafted him. But, you know what I mean, the run game is based around Zeke Elliott, and we've been dying for a few years to have someone who can kind of put their big numbers up like that, and he had a lot of good runs. He put up some good numbers, so I'm going to kind of go with that way just because he's finally coming to the spotlight a bit more over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and ironically, Zeke going for 100 yards, Tony Pollard going for more than 100 yards, both scoring a touchdown. It's the first time two running backs have done that for the Dallas Cowboys since 1998. Hell of a start. Yeah. But moving on to that, or I suppose that links in nicely with the running backs, is the O-line effort. So we know that we were facing Aaron Donald, probably the biggest beast of a defensive tackle you're ever going to face. Zach and Travis Frederick both holding their own there. But for you, RJ, what sort of grade would you give that O-line for that game, for what they did?
I mean, I don't know how you don't give them an A. I know that's probably, maybe a little bit of a prisoner of the moment sort of thing, but you mentioned Zach Martin and Travis Frederick. I'd throw Xavier Su'a-Filo in there as well for how he handled Aaron Donald. I mean, he's somebody who can single-handedly ruin a lot of games, and the Cowboys managed to mitigate that, which was really impressive. I mean, I think that we forgot he was playing, and that's sort of the goal. And so I don't know how you don't give him an A. If you're not, I think you're being a little picky. But an A is what I'd land on.
Yeah. All right. I'll come back to you on the O-line. But Jamie, what would you agree with an A grade? Would you go back? You going for an
without a doubt, yeah. Say 2 running backs over 100 yards, and if I'm not mistaken, one of the receivers, I can't remember which one off the top of my head, was up for over 100 yards. So, yeah, if you, like RJ said, if you can't give him an A for that kind of game, you're being very picky.
Yeah. What was the stat Aaron Donald finished on? I know you mentioned it before. What was it?
I think was it 3 tackles? 3 tackles, but 2 were assisted.
Wow. That's definitely putting their star defensive player to sleep on that one. But coming back to the O-line, RJ, a lot of people were complaining in the off-season about Lyle Collins' contract. How well do you think he's played this year? For me, I would say he's been the star of the show on that O-line.
Yeah. I mean, I think Lyle's probably the best offensive lineman on the Cowboys this season. And that's certainly what you want to see when you pay a guy. And I think that, I think you can almost kind of explain that away a little bit. I mean, obviously Tyron's older and he's always dealing with something. Travis Frederick, obviously is coming back from his autoimmune disorder. And Zach Martin, I think, when you're so excellent for so long, when you're just playing very good, it feels like you have a drop off. And so I think Lyle's probably individually had the best season of any single offensive lineman.
Yeah. One of the things we was talking about in the pregame show last week was Pro Bowl selections. Would you say he's in with a chance of making a Pro Bowl, or would you say it's more going to be the usual standard Zach and Tyrone?
Yeah, I'd say so personally, and I don't think that's a knock against Lyle. I think the Pro Bowl is kind of a popularity contest, and I think that when general football fans think of the Cowboys offensive line, they think of those 3. Lyle is always kind of the forgotten guy there. So you can almost set your watch by it. I guarantee you, the Pro Bowl votes or the rosters come out on Tuesday evening. About Tuesday midnight. In America. There'll be a lot of tweets about how Lyle was snubbed, and we'll probably have an article about it just because, I mean, it's the truth.
Yeah. All right, then. Jamie, in terms of Dak Prescott in this game, finishes off with quite a respectful stat line. No interception, 2 touchdowns. I think it was 128 QBI, I think he got, somewhere around there. Would you say for Dak, when he's throwing less than 30 times a game, he's more efficient, or do you prefer how he's been earlier on in the season where he's making more throws?
I prefer it more when it's a bit more balanced. Like you say, I think you've seen it sometimes, haven't you, when Tony Romo was at the helm.
Yeah.
You don't want your quarterback throwing too many times. I mean, you get to the desperation situations where then you're pretty much unpredictable and you're having to throw it constantly and get away from what you know for. And we know that this team, for the last few years, has been a running team. So I think it helps a lot. But I think it helps any quarterback that say you have that balance, and he'll make the throws that he needs to make without overusing him.
Yeah, I mean, do you see where we're coming at, RJ, with this one with Dak? That it seems to be when he's throwing less per game, or when he's throwing 30 times or less, he seems to be more productive. Does that make sense to you?
It does, but I think there's a lot of context there. I mean, why is he throwing less? Is he throwing less because of the weather? Is it a crazy game? Is Zeke running really well? Are they just putting together 8-minute drives? There's a little bit more to it. There's some more layers. So I think generally, if he's not being forced to throw a lot, it's because the Cowboys are having a lot of sustained success in a lot of other areas, and generally that does lead to victory, like it did against the Rams.
Definitely. And the last bit on the offense, how clever, if you like, do you think that Tavon Austin touchdown was? More for what happened on the other side of the field.
I don't know that. I like the usage of the word clever. I don't know that you can bank on 2 defenders running into each other every week. But it's certainly when you do things like that, it looks clever in hindsight, and that's kind of the reality of when you win. When you win, you're a genius. And I thought it was smart. I thought it was a great design to keep somebody over there just in the event that he broke open. And the Cowboys put somebody fast out there in Tavon Austin. It was a nice little. I feel like we forgot that it was a bit of a revenge game for Tavon with the whole Rams element. So it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, of course. Didn't really think of that. But I mean, his stat line kind of is quite typical, really, of him. It's one reception, 59 yards and a touchdown. I mean, unless you include, because he did have a couple of rushes, it's quite a typical Tavon Austin stat line, really, But moving on to the defense, I'll let you take this one, Jay, first. Who was your defensive MVP for this game?
I was thinking about this earlier when you posted what the questions were going to be. And I'm kind of torn between Sean Lee and Jalen Smith. I thought they both had pretty decent games. And I mean, Sean Lee's interception was just it was great. I mean, it finished Sean Lee. It's just a shame he couldn't get in for a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at his stat line, it is like he's literally got a tick in nearly every defense, apart from forced fumble and a fumble recovery, like you say, in a touchdown. But for you, RJ, who was your defensive MVP, mate?
Sean Lee's a great choice. I think what Sean did was kind of out of nowhere. It was really impressive, certainly. For the purposes of kind of shaking things up, I'll probably go Antoine Woods. Especially because, that's somebody that the Rams picked on last year in the divisional round playoff game. And I thought Antoine and Malik Collins, I thought they held their own. They really obviously limited and inhibited Todd Gurley and what he was able to do. And, that's been a weakness for the Cowboys for so long. It's obviously why they drafted Tristan Hill, and that hasn't worked out. But to get, elite defensive tackle play was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, funnily enough, it's ironic you go there because, we got a group chat that we talked during the game, and one of the first things that popped up initially was straight away was, wow, Antoine Woods is doing his job. As well as everybody else that with defensive, it's quite a selfless position. Nobody notices. You look at tackles, but that's not necessarily it's what they don't do, if you like, as a defensive tackle that's most important. So yeah, it's quite good that you go there. But leading on to that, then, RJ. What sort of grade would you give the defensive line against the Rams?
I think I'll be a little bit more closer to average, I guess. Maybe B+. I think they played well. I think they certainly got to Jared Goff, but I think a lot of that was sort of other design. But I think when you hear B+, I think you're naturally disappointed because you want an A. But I think an A is an elite game, and I think they were very good. But I don't know that they were elite, from a defensive line standpoint. And I don't know that they were elite in the pass game. I know they certainly were elite in terms of stopping the Rams' run game. I'd go B+. I could be persuaded to go A-, after a couple of drinks.
All right, Jake. What effort for the D-line effort? What grade would you give him, or give them?
I'd probably go with Azures somewhere around the B mark. Say that the run game was fantastic to keep something like Todd Gurley under 30 yards for the game. On so many, I think was it 14 attempts they had the rushing. I think they finished with 28 yards. But it would have just been nice to get a bit more pressure to stop, some of the passes that happened and give the back line a bit of help. So go around a B.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sound. All right then. But we was talking about him earlier. One of your MVPs there, Sean Lee. Would you say, RJ, this was for him his career game? That if we look back, this will be the one, or do you think he's had better?
2013 Sean Lee was really great. He had the game in Detroit that was fantastic. When he was a rookie in 2010, he had the great interception in Indianapolis. I mean, Sean has had some really great games. I think this is definitely the game of the latter portion of his career. The guy that was really hurt and couldn't stay on the field. Because I think there's prime Sean Lee and there's a lot that goes into that. But in terms of the Sean Lee that's past that, this is definitely the game of that era, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, totally with you. The older generation, Sean Lee. Do you go with that then, Jay, or would you say you thought that this was his clean sweep?
Yeah, it's probably you could probably say it's been his best game over the last couple of years. I think that there's games like RJ mentioned a few that's probably tops that. It's just a shame that he's been injured as often as he has done, because I think we would have seen a lot more of what we saw on the weekend over the last couple of years, like on a more consistent basis.
Yeah, sure. But another defensive player who's come on the rise, probably a UK Cowboys favourite, if you like, that we've been talking about, is cornerback Jordan Lewis. Would you say, RJ, that it's a no-brainer he should be starting?
Yeah, I think you could have said that about a year and a half ago, and it would have made just as much sense then. But his arms aren't long enough, so the Cowboys have refused to play him, and the Anthony Brown injury has really sort of pigeonholed them to the point that now they have to. And lo and behold, he's a good football player. And so, I mean, good for Jordan Lewis. It's awesome to see him thriving, and hopefully his play across this season is meriting, a larger role for all of 2020.
Agree. I totally agree. And because he was such a steal for us in the draft because of, without diving into too much of the detail, there's no point. Yeah. But it's great to see what he's done. I think more than anything, it's been, because I think for everyone it was obvious of the talent, but I think it was more difficult because of the Chris Richard mold, if you like, especially when you look at the Seattle Seahawks, that Jordan Lewis is this, like you say, the shorter guy with the shorter arms. And it's almost like as if Chris didn't quite know how to slot him in, how to fit him. But as they would say, cream rises to the top. But yeah, I mean, do you think he should be starting as well, Jay? Do you think this is it now with what we're seeing?
I think his play is speaks for itself. You always want guys coming in, like I say, saying his arms are too short and people are knocking him, and you want then that player to have a chip on his shoulder and sit there and say, I'm going to prove you wrong. And the defensive coaches, I bet they're sick of him knocking on the door and saying, what have I got to do to be the guy that starts? Because everything that they throw at him, he's done. So what more reason has the Cowboys now got to not start him?
Yeah, man. He's on 4 sacks for the season, which is for the amount of sacks for a cornerback on a season, ranks second for the Dallas Cowboys. So, he's right up there. But here's one year for you, RJ, that we were looking to talk about is Leighton Vander Esch. Do you think they're going to shut him down for the season? Do you think this is it now? Or do you think possibly, if the Cowboys, well, they will make the playoffs. I'm being positive there, positive mental attitude. But do you think if he was to come back and be in the playoffs, do you think they'll shut him down for the season?
Well, so it feels, in my own personal opinions, I think it feels doubtful that he would play this season against Philadelphia. And should the Cowboys win, I think it'll be interesting to see how they would handle Week 17 against Washington, whether they would play guys, whether they would let him rest, maybe Amari Cooper and Tyron, everybody gets a chance to get a little bit more healthy. So I think if we do see Leighton Vander Esch, I have to imagine that the next time at earliest could be the wild card round. But at this point, I don't know that there's any real benefit to IRing him. I don't want to say there's so little left in the season, but there's so few games that I don't know that it's worth that roster spot. I think you keep him around just in the event that he feels healthy enough that he's ready to roll. But I don't think that we'll see him in Philadelphia, which is a shame because that was kind of where he really sort of stormed onto the scene last season.
Yeah. Do you think we'll see him, Jay, or do you think this neck injury is going to be... Because it's something that he struggled with in college as well, bear in mind, and neck injuries you do have to be careful with. Do you think it's going to be a close down, or do you think we might see him, hopefully?
I think he's probably smart enough, really, to shut him down. If the coaches are confident that we can get through these next 2 games and advance into the playoffs, you've got to think of the bigger picture on you. Would you rather have Leighton Vander Esch playing in these 2 games or appearing in these 2 games, potentially getting injury, do you know what I mean? Worse than it already is, and then he's out for the playoffs? Or, do you know what I mean? So you've got to look at the bigger picture. Yeah, he would help this defense a lot if he played, but I don't think he's worth risking him.
Okay. Right. And something that I thought would be quite good to pop up on this one, as it stands for this season and career, we're going Goff versus Dak, because obviously we know where they were drafted in the same year and rounds apart, RJ. Who would you say has had the better, bear in mind Goff's made a Super Bowl, who's had the better career, would you say?
I mean, in terms of who's had the better career, I think maybe you probably lean Jared Goff just because he has been to a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
He's had those successes. Obviously, didn't win it, but I think if you're asking who's the better player, who would you rather have moving forward, I think that most people are starting to realize that it is Dak Prescott. I think there's some concern for the Rams or the contract they just gave Jared Goff. So that's an interesting situation to look at for the next 5 or so years.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's always going to be, I think, one of the things that, there's the three quarterbacks, isn't there? There's Goff, Dak, and Wentz, because they were all taking the same time. It's always going to be the thing that they match up against. But for you, Jamie, Goff versus Dak, who are you saying is having the better career so far?
Not to be kind of a homer, but I'd probably say Dak. And even when you take away kind of the stats, just what he does for this team, leadership style on and off the field, you don't ever really see that portrayed by Goff. And I just think all round for what Dak does, I would say Dak.
Okay, yeah, I'm going Dak. I think a lot of Goff's success is Sean McVay's what he's doing, and you've seen in the Super Bowl, Bill Belichick, he won, as they always say, he takes the best player away. This time he took away, and you could see what he'd done, he took away Sean McVay. Once he was left there, Goff was sort of on an island, really, not knowing what to do. But let's go into the mailbag. We're ripping through this show today for you, RJ. But we'll get into the mailbag. One of the questions, Josh, he's asking, which Cowboy has been your favourite to interview? But we'll also throw in with that your favourite player as well. We'll go all time and current.
In terms of my own personal favorite players, I mean, you can go any, there's a lot of legends. I mean, we're all fortunate that the team really rich in that. I'm 30 years old, so I happened to, be in high school and be at a really impressionable age when Tony Romo sort of took over. And, that was a really special time in my life. And, when the internet was sort of really taking off and things like that and the media world. And so it was really, really special to see a lot of things that Tony Romo did. I'll always hold those times, sort of close in my memory. But in terms of favorite player to interview, I've been really blessed and really fortunate to have a lot of opportunities to do stuff like that. I really enjoyed interviewing Bryce Butler, when he was on the Cowboys. I interviewed him once at training camp, and I was wearing a golf polo because I love golf, and he asked me if it was a golf polo. And we ended up talking about golf, and he put his arm around me, and he had just practiced. It was kind of terrible because he was like dripping in sweat. And we walked around the practice field, and Ox and I just kind of talking. And then while we were I was interviewing him, the entire offensive line just came and surrounded us and kind of was just joking around with him. So that was really cool and really fun. And I've always been a fan of Bryce. And, some guys are really cool when you interview them, and some guys, they're a little busy or whatever. And Bryce made a lot of time for me that day, and it was really awesome.
Yeah, ironic you mentioned him because we still follow him on Instagram, and we'll make comments, and he'll always like them. So he's one of the few players who will, ex-players who continue to do that. But I'm going to ask you the same question, Jay, because you've had a chance to do a show in the Star. Who's your favorite player at the moment, and your favorite player you got to have a talk / interview?
Currently, it's between two. Dak and Jalen Smith. I just think, Dak speaks for himself. He's all, since he got to the Cowboys, he's always been, I'd say, from pillar to post by fans, and people are always doubting him, and he's just shown that. And Jalen Smith, what a story. He come back from pretty much having no chance of having a career, and he's going to be an absolute star in this league. He's been fun to watch these first couple of years. So, yeah, I always get excited when we make some big plays. In terms of, we didn't actually get to interview anybody when we was out there. I'll probably, if it's all right, I'll probably flick it to a kind of a funny moment when we was going around the Star and it's been shown around. Jason Garrett came around the corner. Mickey was saying that he was about to interview him for his weekly coach's spot. And literally, I think we stood there for about 15 minutes. There was myself, Lauren, Sam, and Dan Turner. Stood there for 15 minutes talking to him. Not once did we speak about football. The only thing he wanted to know was what we voted for in Brexit. and literally, that's all we talked. That's all he spoke to us for 15 minutes. So that was a bit crazy.
I love it. Always got to enjoy a Jason Garrett or a head coach story. They're always the best. But here's one for you, RJ, that come from your old pal Brian. He's asking, do you think there's some concerns with Michael Bennett? I mean, there's the 2 times he got the neutral zone infraction, and they were quite clear. Do you think there's any concerns with him at all?
I don't think so. I mean, I think I don't know that I would call Michael Bennett an elite player, but I think elite players, sometimes you live with that. And I think Michael Bennett's done enough to sort of buy himself room for error. And, I think he's done enough on the field. I think he's been an impact off the field in terms of a strong leader for the locker room. And so I'm okay with that. I think that, football's a game where, you're going to have plus minus moments, and I'm okay living with that.
Yeah. Okay. And then I'm going to ask you both this question, and I'll start with you, RJ. Do the Cowboys make the playoffs?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I think it comes down to them, facing the Eagles, and it will be really, I think I speak for all of us, a really stressful week and day. But it'd be really funny to beat the Eagles and to end their season, and for the Cowboys to win the division in Philadelphia. And so I think that happens. And I don't even know what I think happens beyond that. I think this has been a weird season, and it's been a lot of fun. And my favorite thing about the Cowboys is that we're all doing our Christmas shopping, and they're relevant. Like when you're somewhere with your wife or whatever, and you pull out your phone to check something. You can, because the Cowboys are going to be relevant, because that's what they do. And at the very least, I'm grateful for that. But I do think that they'll be a playoff team.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like you say, with the wild card playoffs, what happens there? I think we'll have the Niners, and I think that'll be quite an interesting game. But for you, Jay, playoff? Are we playoff bound?
Yeah, I think we win out. I just said it's going to be nice going into Philadelphia and kind of raining on their parade. It's always good to get a win against the Eagles. But yeah, I can't see us losing either of the games, to be fair. Even if we get against the Redskins, if we don't play as many stars as we normally would do, I still think our backups would do a decent job.
Yeah, definitely. And the good news is looking at that Eagles-Redskins game, Eagles definitely look like they're struggling at the moment. They're just so slow and clunky. Do you agree, RJ?
Yeah, I do, and I'm upset because I live in San Antonio, and Greg Ward was a San Antonio Commander, and so we really liked him, and so it's bothersome to watch him have success for the Eagles. But they look bad, and it would be funny though, in a terrible way, if all that ended on Sunday afternoon.
I'm telling you it will. All right, so yeah, I've always got positive mentality, as I've said already. Always stay positive. But that's it for the post-game show with you, RJ. Jamie, thank you very much for coming on. As always, you're always here. You're part of the furniture. And RJ, thank you very much for coming back on again, mate. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Hopefully, in the off-season, we can get you back on, do a bit of draft analysis, looking at some college players, if that's all right with you.
Sure, I'd love that. I meant to say last time, I know that you have got that Texas A&M flag. That's my alma mater. So I'm always down to talk about some college football. And I would be remiss if I did not mention what a great job I think you guys do. I think it's the coolest thing that you guys are as passionate as you are. And I mean, I talk about you guys all the time, how rabid Cowboys fans are, and sort of the Cowboys stronghold is that it's so strong even in the United Kingdom. And I've become a larger EPL fan, so in a weird way, I feel closer to you guys. And it's a rough season for my Manchester United, but we'll bounce back sooner rather than later.
No, but thank you very much, RJ. I mean, it's always a pleasure, and thank you for everything that you do with us as well. And I hope you and your family have a great Christmas and a New Year, and we'll be speaking to you after the Cowboys win the Super Bowl again.
Likewise, guys. Merry Christmas, and I'll talk to you soon enough.
Lovely. Thank you very much.